Welcome back to the Equity Matters podcast. This is your host, JB3, and it's been quite some time since I've gotten a chance to talk to you all. Hope everyone's doing well as we head into the end of the year, but I think it's important that I take some time to talk about kind of where I've been. Now, what I mentioned at the end of the last episode was that I was anticipating becoming a father of 4, and I was bringing into this world my firstborn daughter. And today's episode is really about what that experience was like. I've been in public health now since 2013, when I first joined the Michigan Public Health Institute as a policy analyst. And what that role did for me was really opened up my eyes to what health inequities, health disparities look like. And I've talked about this previously on the pod, but I want to give some context into kind of what I encountered during delivery. And so even to start this story, I find that I have to go back. And with me going back, I'm going back into like the 90s, where my mom told me as a young boy, even as we were anticipating the birth of my younger brother, that sometimes mommies die at the hospital. And I couldn't wrap my childish mind around it. It was really a struggle for me because I just didn't get, like, you know, you go to the hospital to give birth, but how is death an option? And I was really concerned. Like, I was really stressed out. I remember being at my grandmother's house after they dropped me off because it was a planned delivery. And just the whole time, I'm just like, what's going to happen? And I really just was scared. I was really nervous. And fortunately, around 9 something that evening, I got the call saying, hey, your brother has been born, mom is doing well. But at that same time, it planted a seed for me where I was always concerned about what would happen when we reached that point in our lives, or my life specifically, when I was ready to have children and what would happen to my wife. And so we fast forward. I mentioned I'm a father of 4. And so even with the twins, my firstborn children, I knew what the statistics and what the data, because these are all things that I would talk about on a regular basis. So I understand that Black women are anywhere between 2 to 5 times more likely to die based on childbirthing complications. And this is stuff that I've studied that everyone, I think, should know. But unfortunately they don't. And for me, I take that realization into all the spaces that I occupy. And so first set of twins, born, no problem. Mom's doing well, grateful for it. We fast forward to 2022, where my next son was born, and again, things went relatively well, no concerns. We fast forward to this year, to 2023, August of this year, and things didn't go as smoothly as one would hope in a childbirthing story. So now that we're here, let's dive into it. So we arrived to the hospital because, again, this is a planned procedure. We know what to expect. We've been through this a few times now. Knowing that we're going to get up early, we're going to head over to the hospital. We're fortunate because we have doulas. Shout out to our doula crew who have supported us oh so much throughout this journey. And we make our way to the mother-baby section. We check in, and all is going well. Everything is going the way that it's supposed to. Your partner goes and gets wheeled to where she's supposed to be. You wait until they call you to the back. And so I'm waiting. I'm not thinking anything extra. And I finally get called in and say, all right, well, mom's already prepped. We're going to get you in. And then you end up waiting some more. It's a lot of waiting in this process. And so even as I'm waiting, as I'm, we're having a good conversation, we're laughing because we know exactly what to expect. And we find ourselves getting wheeled into the back. Mom goes first, they give you your scrubs and say, hey, put these on. And if you can't tell, I'm a bit of a broader dude. Finding scrubs that fit, you might as well just bring your own, but we make it work. I might be able to drop some pictures in here because I've got some classic scrub fits. I was contemplating wearing some heat to the hospital, but I see that on Instagram, but I actually don't want to take my nice shoes to the hospital because it's actually a really nasty place. But that's neither here nor there. So back to the story. So you get your scrubs on, and then you go into what I describe as like the whitest room that I've ever been in. It's just really sterile. And you get in there, and there's typically, a lot of different medical professionals in there. So our OB was in there. My wife's main doctor was in there. The anesthesiologists are in there. There's just a lot of people. There's a variety of nurses. And so her procedure has started. We're having a good time. I mean, you try to make light of the situation because you're getting cut on, but also you realize that you're getting ready to bring life into the world, which is really cool. And everything goes as fine as it's supposed to. Baby comes out. I have my first daughter. I'm ecstatic because this is something completely different. I hear her screaming, which for many of us is a telltale sign that, all right, lungs are working, great. Everything's well. There's no complications. We're just grateful for a safe delivery. And we get wheeled back. You get to push a little button that plays a little nursery rhyme and lullaby that lets everyone else know that you've had a baby. Super cool, right? And we go back to the recovery space. And we're just sitting there, you're happy because baby's born. You get to have some skin to skin. And you're just able to cherish the time that you have together. It's kind of a solemn moment almost, just because it's so peaceful, because at this point, we hadn't shared with family that the baby had been born. We were the only people that knew this information. And it was just really, really a special moment. We eventually share with this group that we identified as our birthing village. And there's a little bit of backstory to that too that I want to share. And I'll get to it later in the story. But we find ourselves moved from that recovery space to now back to labor, the mother-baby unit. And so you move, again, there's just a lot of transitions that take place when you deliver. And so we're heading to the next space. And again, all is well. There's no reason for concern. My wife is eating, and baby is latching well. It's just a good overall experience. But something happened between the morning and the afternoon that, looking back, I didn't pay the kind of attention that I should have. And she's eating, but she can't keep her food down. And so she's throwing up quite a bit. And we're just, kind of taking notes, saying, hey, this might be just a side effect from the anesthesia. We're just trying to figure out, what could it possibly be? And then we go into the evening. And so people who know that this is it's a long journey from hospital to home. And folks get tired. And one of the beautiful things is that's one of the rare places where you actually get help, you get support. Like, people are willing to, like, hey, we can watch your baby while you rest. And that's not a regular occurrence, but it's something that I'm glad that you're able to take advantage of. And so baby went with the nurses a few times, and we were able to get a little bit of rest. And so in one of those instances where I'm sleeping, I'm sure you've seen the little memes with the terrible little pull-out couches. Those are real, they suck, but that's just part of the experience. I'm asleep and I suddenly wake up, and it's like close to 11 o'clock at night. And there's all these people in the room, and they're not familiar faces, but there are nurses, they are other medical folks who are surrounding my wife. And I'm just kind of like, what's going on, because I'm still a little bit groggy, a little bit fatigued. And they're saying, hey, Dad, we need you to hold baby while we check out Mom. So I've got this this fresh baby that's, less than 12 hours old, who's looking at me, and I'm trying to figure out, one, what's going on because I just woke up, but two, why are all these people surrounding my wife? And as I'm listening to her, she's saying, that she can't breathe. She's having a hard time just kind of grasping her air. And she's just really concerned. She's nervous. And seeing her hyperventilating in that way, and it just becomes a really stressful situation really fast. And so they're trying to relax her. And I'm grateful that they weren't gaslighting her. They made very clear, like, we hear what you're saying. We're trying to figure it out. But the situation had reached a point of crisis so fast that we weren't able to really kind of be stable about it. It was like, we're in an emergency situation now. And so what ended up happening was she had lost some blood. And we weren't quite sure why that was, especially because the procedure had already taken place. And we thought everything was, good as good. They wheeled my wife back to the recovery space. And I'm still in here with this fresh baby. And again, I'm confused. I'm not really certain what's going on. And so I sent a message to our village, the birthing village, that said, hey, this is why this group was created, because we need your prayers. And so, backstory on the birthing village, prior to our baby being born, we had a celebration. It was a blessing away. It's a mother's blessing, where my wife identified people who were close to her, people who could pray for her, people who poured into her, people who supported us as a family. And they came to our home, and we had an event, if you will. There was prayer. There were just affirmations. It was a space where women could collect those experiences they could share with each other, and they could pour into my wife. And so after the event ended, we decided to transition all of those folks and their phone numbers into one group chat, because we wanted to be able to reach out, let them know when the baby was born, but also continue to pray for us. And so she says, send a message to the village. I'm not sure what's going on, but just say that we need prayers. And so this is around 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to listen to my wife, and I send the message, and included in that group is obviously my mom and her mother and her sister and just other folks, our doula, some family friends, and it got scary really fast. And so with wife going to another section of the hospital, I have the baby. They eventually come and get me, and they walk me into the space that she's in. And the first thing that I see, obviously, is my wife surrounded by all these people, all these doctors. And I look to the other side of the room, and there's these medical pads that are just filled with blood. And it triggers a memory for me that I tend to repress from my childhood, where I had a relative who was experiencing an active miscarriage, which I wasn't quite familiar with. Obviously, as a kid, having now experienced a miscarriage of our own, I was able to piece things together, but I see just all of this blood in the room. And obviously, this is a hospital, so there's going to be blood, but I still just was in shock by how much I had seen. And I see my wife, and I can't get to her, which to me was probably one of the hardest parts of this entire experience, is kind of just being removed a bit, because I still have this baby in one hand, and I'm observing all these things happening on the other. And they say, we have to do something to stop the bleeding. And, I've watched my fair share of medical dramas and horror movies, and you're like, okay, let's figure it out. Let's get it done. And they wheel her away. They take her to the OR. in the operating room to try to figure out what they can do. And so they go through a few different methods and interventions in order to stop the bleeding. And again, I'm still stuck with this baby. This baby who doesn't really know like who I am, what this place is, but they typically know their mother. And I'm sitting there and I'm also now responsible for conveying information to the birthing village. And I'm trying to have conversations on the side with my mother and with my wife's mother, who are both at our home while everything is going on. Because mind you, this is August. We're preparing for back to school. We're preparing the kids just for that normal routine of things. And I'm just trying to be the public information officer that I never wanted to be. And I used to joke about interview questions where they say, have you ever had to deliver bad news? And I remind people that I started my career off in child welfare. Everything I delivered was bad news. And it, for me, was, I have no updates, I have no updates, I have no updates. But I also didn't have an opportunity to really process what I was experiencing at the same time. And I wish I would have been a little bit more selfish in that regard. But the only things that I had to really console me in that particular space was this new baby who's looking at me for protection and guidance, and my phone. And so I'm listening to songs that matter to me and my wife, because in my mind, I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I'm having conversations with God, because I'm like, there's no way that you would bring all these people into our lives, this birthing village, just to take her away from me. Like, you wouldn't have all these people pour into her, affirming her, talking about what she's done and transformed in their lives, for her to be taken from mine. And never in my thinking process did I think or consider that she wouldn't make it out alive. But I did also know the data. Like, I know the stats. I know the things that Black women experience as far as interacting with systems of racism, provider bias, just the outcomes in general, and how disparate they are. I understand all of those things. But at the same time, I'm just like, there's no way that things can end up this particular way. And so I'm listening to these songs. I have the playlist going. I listen to our wedding song. People know I'm an old soul, so we're listening to Anita Baker, Angel, which was the song that my wife walked down the aisle. But I found myself really attracted to this Frankie Beverly and Mays song, The Look in Your Eyes. And I don't know if it was just considering the look of fear that I saw before she left, or if it was the look of happiness when her first daughter was born. Like, all of those things, like, for whatever reason, that song really resonated with me, and I kept playing it. Like, it just stayed on loop. It stayed on loop. And people would come into the room and say, hey, Dad, are you okay? Do you need anything? And I can barely sit down. My legs are so weak. The adrenaline is running. I don't know what to do. And so I think in some ways I feel like I dissociated, because it was like, I'm going to put myself on the back burner for a second, and I'm just going to be here with this baby, because this baby needs me. But I need you all to keep me informed on what's happening with my wife. And so that was the only thing that I requested. People offer me water. I want an update. And eventually one of the surgeons came back, explained just how much blood she had lost. I don't remember the number at the top of my head, but it was several pints. And we had to make some decisions about her future. And I've never been in a situation where I've had to make decisions on behalf of someone else in this manner. I understand it for people who are older and they're caretakers and they're responsible for family members. But I didn't think at 34 years old I would be making those type of decisions or having those type of conversations. And so when they tell me that if you want your wife to live, we have to have an emergency uterine hysterectomy. We have to take out her uterus. I come from the old school, right? I clearly don't have a uterus, but I have a grandmother that I think of often who would tell me, everything that you came in with, you should leave with. And we didn't come to the hospital on this day to have a hysterectomy. We came to deliver a baby. But when you're positioned to have to make those kind of decisions, you're going to do what's best. And so they had tried everything else. They said, this is the only thing that we can do. And they did it. And so they disappear again for another 40 minutes. And I'm still sitting there and I'm trying to provide information to family. And I'm sitting here holding this baby. And eventually I finally get some water because I don't know what else to do. I'm not hungry, but I realize that I'm about to pass out. We go maybe another 45 minutes or an hour before someone comes back. And when they come back, they finally tell me we were able to stop the bleeding. And I could tell that they saw in my face just this face of relief. But at the same time, I was terrified because I didn't quite understand why. Why did we get to this place? How did we get to this place? And eventually, they say, hey, do you want to see your wife? I'm like, yeah, obviously. And they're getting ready to take her to now the intensive care unit of the hospital. And so we've been through a few different sections at this point. And she rolls by me on the stretcher, which is, you think about cinematic moments in a movie. It almost felt slow motion-ish. She was still under anesthesia, and I'm sure she doesn't remember this moment, but I just grabbed her hand. I was just like, it's just really good to see you. And we find ourselves again separated because now she's in the ICU, but I'm over in mother baby. And to tell you, walking back into that empty mother baby room with no mother in it, when you see the bed and there's no mother, it's tough. It's really difficult because someone else is supposed to be there and they're not. And it's painful. It hurt me every time I had to come back into that room and my wife wasn't there. But we were able to make arrangements with the hospital so that someone could watch the baby while I would go visit, or we would both go visit while she was in the ICU. And I don't remember the exact number of days, but maybe 2 or 3 days later, we were finally able to be in the same space. We were able to come together, and as she was working through her recovery, she was finally able to spend time with her baby because obviously she barely had that opportunity before things went left. But when I tell you the fear that I experienced, not even talking about what she experienced, and I'm grateful she's given me permission to share this story, but it was just one of the most terrifying experiences that I've ever had. And I've done some dumb shit in my life, and I'm fortunate to still be here. But this was a different level of cerebral fear that I've never encountered. But all that to say that we are now 3 months removed from that experience. My paternity leave has since ended, so I'm back to work, and mom and baby are doing great. There are still things that we have to navigate as far as what traumas look like from that experience. I still get triggered or activated or responsive when there's a lot of lights on now, because I find myself, this even happened this morning where the boys woke up really early and turned all the lights on, but I'm asleep, and so the first thing I see when I wake up are 1,000 different lights. I think I'm back in the hospital again. But there's still things that we have to navigate with that. And so as we prepare to transition the episode a bit, I want to acknowledge just one, my appreciation for a shift in the dialogue for maternal health, because obviously we've been talking about this for years and we haven't quite seemed to figure out what interventions are necessary to reverse the trends that we see. But we do know that one, systemic racism is real, and two, the outcomes of our Black and Latinx mothers are disparately impacted compared to those of white mothers. And there's something to say about, I don't typically jump on the implicit bias train, but there's something to explore with how Black mothers are treated from the point of I'm having a baby to I am ready to deliver a baby to the baby has been born, and even beyond, because I gave a presentation not so long ago about the child welfare system and how African American families are more likely to end up in this system, stay in this system, and receive worse services in this system. So, and you can't ignore the role of race in that. And focusing here really on maternal health, we have to find a way to make sure that mothers have what they need from the point of conception to the point of delivery and beyond. Doulas are one piece of the puzzle, absolutely. We are grateful that we have a pre and a post delivery doula, and we appreciate the community that is built. But you look at us, right? We're relatively well off. We're, whatever middle income is these days. My wife has multiple degrees. I mean, think about Beyonce, think about Serena Williams, you think about all these people who have access to resources, yet they still end up in these same type of situations. Why? I mean, if we're digging at root causes, you really need to understand the bedrock of all of those things, and to really uproot the racism that's tied to the medical profession. No shade to doctors, because obviously I'm a social worker. We got our own work to do. But to really uproot these practices, we got to engage in more dialogue. We got to have more conversations. We have to shift policies. We have to look at the ways that people navigate throughout these systems. I mean, having conversations with my wife about, you enter into the third trimester, your hands swell up. She didn't want to wear her ring. There were instances where she would go to the doctor's office and she wouldn't have her ring on. And she felt like she was treated differently, as if she was some, single mother who had baby daddies or whatever you want to describe it as, but she was treated differently. And it shouldn't matter what your marital status is. If you're there to deliver a baby, you should be treated fairly. You should be treated with kindness, empathy, and that goes from the receptionist, the security guard, all the way to the doctor. Like, all of those people have to be trained in the same way. And really digging at, how do we make sure that we create a culture of affirmation? We're in a place now where we should be able to do that. We're beyond the recognition of the disparity. We're at the place now of designing interventions, creating change, evaluating success. Like, all of those things should be taking place right now. And so I wanted to hop on the pod just to give people an update of where we are. Family's doing well. We're getting back into the routine of things. I'm back in the office 2 days out the week. So that's a little bit new. I'm managing. I'm tired than a mug. If you can see the bags under my eyes, they're real. But I'm glad to have a little bit of time just to connect with you all. More episodes on the way. I had a breakfast or a lunch meeting the other day with a mentor who said, every episode doesn't have to be 30 minutes long. I got some ideas about how to get some snippets in there, make sure that we're still engaging. My wife has a vlog now, which I'm really proud of, the work that she's been doing. I think part of it is in her healing, but a lot of the part is really nurturing into her creativity. So I'm going to make sure I link that in here. And I'm just learning a lot from her around, how do you engage with YouTube, and how do you make sure that, people can find your content. So this is something I learned from her. Make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe to the podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you do that. Otherwise, we're on Apple Podcasts primarily. I don't think the video crosses over to Spotify and the other guys. But hey, make sure that you're tuned in. Make sure you hit that bell so that you know when new episodes drop. And it's just really good to be back. Look forward to more episodes. And of course, you already know, equity matters.